Well, we are over here pretending that we're not in the middle of a ginormous, no cooler than 100 degrees streak right here now, but we're gonna think much cooler, much snowflakier thoughts and much more winter vibes as we quilt up this modern handcraft snowflake. And I'm so super excited to get it quilted. I spent the whole time that I was piecing it thinking about how I was gonna quilt it, thinking about how I was gonna put on the back of it. And so I already know all the answers to those questions that you may have. And so I'm just gonna run it down. So here is the extent of what I can show you on the design wall. As you can see, you can only see about half of it, but that's where we're at. So I am going to quilt this with white thread. Yes, I did think about using other colors, the red or the green. I decided the most important part that I didn't want color to break up. I don't want colored thread to go through my snowflake. So I want my snowflake to stay white. And so I'm gonna use white thread. I thought about using a light gray, but I think I really just want to use white, and I'll be really shocked if that changes by the time I get this on the long arm and I switch to light gray, because that does have the glitter in there, but I think I still want the white. And so with that, I'm going to do the holly leaves pantograph. I did it last year on the Christmas tree quilt that I made for my mother-in-law, and I believe I did it on my husband's stocking 2 or 3 years ago whenever I did my first Quiltmas, before he was even a fiance or even a husband. So that's what I'm going to do for that, because I think if I was to do snowflakes on this, it would just be snowflake on snowflake on snowflake and be like overkill. And the snowflake designs I have are very dense, and I still want this to be loose, and I want it to be cuddly and snuggly and a good lap snuggle throw quilt. So I'm steering clear of those that are going to be denser quilting that take longer to stitch out and all that. And for my backing, I decided at first, I thought I was going to do red because I'm going to bind it in green, because I have a ton of the green. It's a green fabric that has some glitter in it. I'm pretty sure my mom made us Christmas dresses out of it one year. I've got like 2 1/4 yards is what I started with, and I only used about 1/8 of a yard. And so I'm going to use that for the binding. And so I was thinking, well, I don't want green on the binding and green on the back. And then I was thinking about the red. I think that's just gonna be too much red. And so I decided we're gonna go with some natural. So it's not quite white, it's a little creamier, which works because some of these are a lot creamier than the white of the snowflake. And so I think this is gonna be a good, nice, cuddly backing. I did think about doing black, but here we are. I think this is gonna be the winner because it's that nice, it feels very wintry, feels very snowy, feels very nice inside with my air conditioning on. And so this is the 80 wide Mirage. So what I'm gonna do is, this ended up being like 60, I wanna say like 61 or 62 by 74. So I'm gonna load it on my frame sideways because it's gonna be 80 wide selvage to selvage, and so the selvages will go down the sides. If you haven't seen me load my long arm with Minky before, the selvages are going to go down the sides, and the raw cut edges are going to be on the leaders. So I'm going to turn it, and that also means that I'll have less zones because I'll be doing the length side to side, and then my shorter will be the other direction. So it's all going to come together nice and happy. I'm so excited. I really want to bind this. Like, I'm really excited to get this quilted and going, and I'm going to be sad when Quiltmas in July is all over, but I can already promise you I've got some fabulous ideas for Quiltmas in December. So let's not focus on the future, let's focus on the now and go get this loaded on the long arm. Well, as you can see by now, the long arm has returned and it's back in action. So I've got it all basted in. I've got my thread all loaded. I'm just gonna go with white thread like I had mentioned before. And then I've got my all over holly ready to quilt out. So it's gonna be nice and big. So then it won't add too much thread to there, but we'll still give it a nice all over texture and nice festive feel. So I'm gonna get this all set up so that we can quilt it, and then it'll be time for binding. So here is how that fantastic holly quilting turned out. So nice and all over, and it's just so good. I love how it's a little festive without being super dense. You can see it a little bit on the back. It just kind of adds a little bit of extra embossing and texture to the already embossed backing. So now what I need to do is I'm going to cut some strips of binding out of this fabric, and then we're gonna put the binding on, and then we're gonna put it all together. First, I've got to trim it up, so I think this one's gonna have to go out into the living room because it's much too big for my sewing room floor. So let's go get this done. Well, it has been a long, strenuous, technically an 8-month journey, but even with this month alone, goodness, who would have thought? All the chaos that could possibly happen with this quilt has happened, it seems, but it's done and I love it. Everything about it is exactly how I hoped it would turn out. And yes, I am still like 1% wanting to keep it for myself, but I know it is going to be well loved, and it sounds like my aunt already plans to steal it and she hasn't even seen it, but it's perfect. It's perfect. I think it's amazing. The quilting on there turned out exactly how I hoped it would, with that white thread, and just kind of, you can see it when it's close up, but when it's further away, it just kind of fades in there. It doesn't stand out on the Snowflake at all, and I mean, you can't go wrong with a nice plush minky backing, and the Mirage from Shannon Fabrics was amazing, and it's just perfect. Perfectly perfect. And there's that sparkly green binding. It's obviously, as you know, it's the one thing that I had a whole bunch of that wasn't just a boring solid. I'm so happy with it, like 16 thumbs up. And yes, it was a lot of work. I do feel like pressing my seams open was a new experience. Was it my favorite experience? No, but in the end, this quilt laid so flat. The only time it had an issue was when I had it folded waiting for my machine to come back, and that was its own chaos in of its own. And quick rundown on what happened there is my screen stopped responding to me, my like built-in screen to the machine. The buttons weren't responding, so I had to take it off my frame and ship it back to Utah to get it looked at. They couldn't replicate the problem, but it's back, it's ready to party, and it clearly partied Christmas style on this quilt. So Quiltmas in July has come to an end, but it does make me that much more excited for Quiltmas this December. So stay tuned for that. We've got a little bit more planning time to do. And in the meantime, let me show you some final photos of this. And then we'll be back to our regularly scheduled, no specific seasonal theme quilting and sewing.